1981, Commando was made in 1985.
Viewer discretion is advised for the movie Commando. Certain scenes of violence might upset sensitive viewers.
If you enjoy high-performance driving and get a kick out of competing, there's a new set of wheels just waiting for you. Sooner or later, aggressive driving wrecks lives.
Count the breaks in the music whilst changing CDs on Samsung's Little Big Max. Ready? No brake. Still no brake. Samsung's Little Big Max. Hates silence. Loves music. Samsung. Leadership through products.
Grasser proudly welcomes a new member to the family. New baby Grasser, the teeny weeny talking, eating, drinking, laughing, singing, sharing wine.
Roger, 7851, a family.
Should have gone to Battery Center for a free battery check.
Matrix? Call the Federal Building. Have them monitor every police, aviation, and marine channel in the area.
What are you expecting?
World War III.
The English are here. Catch all the action from 10 until 6 on TV1 Top Sport and NNTV Sport, and highlights each evening on TV1 Top Sport. Talk about easy meat.
Live from around the world, every night, Sky News on TV1.
Welcome to Gillette World Sport Special. Each week, we satellite to you the headline stories from right across the globe. From China, Europe, and the Americas to Africa and Asia. News, nostalgia, sports people, the world records, the big events, the breaking stories, the main attractions. They're all here, all year, on the #1 show, Gillette World Sports Special. First away this week, they look like autumn leaves tossed in the wind. But don't you believe it, the Aerobatics World Championship is all about precision and control. Another solo sport full of twists and turns is mountain biking. There are many races these days, but nothing to compare with the 24-hour challenge in Seefeld, Austria. All day and all night.
Now the riders can only rely on their instincts and what little light their lamps give off. The struggle with oneself, the mountain, and the night starts.
The Formula One powerboat season is coming to a close. We visit China for the penultimate round of their World Championship. In this game, you've got to keep your nose down. In show jumping, it's the other way round. You've got to keep your nose up.
Dear, oh dear.
We feature the Hampton Classic Grand Prix, highlight of America's summer season. And we catch up on the golfers who have all their sights on China. That's where the final of this year's World Cup of Golf will be held. And we've our regular bulletin of eye-catching news. The Chinese women are at it again. They've smashed the track world records. Now they're doing the same in the field events. And the 28-year-old woman who has set out on a 28,000-mile journey, all alone against the winds and currents, non-stop around the world. We start, though, in that imaginary 1 cubic kilometer of sky. Those are the boundaries in which the pilots have to perform their tricks in this, the final round of the Aerobatics World Championship. 57,000 spectators craning back their necks at Tajima in Japan.
1995 has seen a colossal battle between pilots from the former Eastern European countries, Russia, and the West. Lithuanian Jurgis Kairis had announced that he wanted to win this event here in Japan. He's well known for a spectacular style of flying, performing feats that are way beyond the abilities of other pilots. His performance here in Japan is no exception, as he pulls out all the stops. In this maneuver alone, there are 18 360-degree rolls. And then, the outside loop. Jurgis Kairis has become known as a bit of a showman. The performance is on the ground as well as in the air. He's followed by former European and world champion Patrick Paris in the Moudry cap. The Frenchman's style of flying is totally different to the Lithuanian. It's tight and precise. Each pilot must perform his role within a 1 kilometer theoretical cube in the sky. The judges are impressed and award Paris second place in the competition. American Rick Massagey has really impressed the judges in 1995. It's the first year he's contested the World Championship, but his slow, floating style doesn't impress the judges here in Japan. The pilot who's held everybody in awe this year is Frenchman Dominique Roland. He's fought head-to-head with Patrick Paris. He manages to secure third place here in Japan with enough points to take the world title. Astonishingly, there are no Russian pilots in the top 5 this year. The Frenchman has won the World Championship, and Jurgis Kairis is still as popular as ever. To Patrick Paris, the winner's medal for the event here in Japan. But to Dominique Roland, it's the World Championship title in 1995.
1 square kilometer of sky, a tough 12-kilometer course on land awaiting the competitors in the Seefeld 24-hour bike challenge. Seefeld is a ski resort high in the Austrian Tyrol, and the course includes a 400-meter climb up the Schwankopf ski run. The race starts at 12 noon and goes on until 12 noon the next day. There are individual competitors who do take rests, but the 30 4-man and women teams race non-stop all day and right through the night.
The course runs through town and then through the woods. The tracks head along the cross-country ski trail towards the mountains before it turns towards Seefeld's local peak. The trail up the almost 1,500-meter-high Schwandkopf really takes it out of professionals and amateurs alike. A few riders really sweat on the long haul up, but everybody is still in a good mood and impressed by the beautiful landscape of the stretch. The course levels out after the Schwandkopf Lake. It is the only place to relax a little. The relay teams consist of 4 riders each, changing after each round. The Jamis team out of Switzerland soon takes the lead. After reaching the highest point, the ski lift mountain station, it is downhill to the valley along the ski slopes. Weather remained stable despite bad weather predictions for snow down to 1,000 meters. It is rather dry, and the more courageous let their bikes roll at full speed down the slopes. After the downhill, there's another stretch over rolling terrain to a narrow path through the forest. This stretch down to the lake is overgrown with roots, especially demanding on riders and material. The course circles around the Wildsee Lake, loops around, and heads through town again. Most teams have already finished 10 rounds when night falls. Now the riders can only rely on their instincts and what little light their lamps give off. The struggle with oneself, the mountain, and the night starts. Temperatures are just above freezing. The cold night and the individual helmet lamps make it seem so unreal, so ghostly. The climbs and the rides back down seem longer and steeper on every lap. The wheat separate from the chaff during the night and early hours of the morning. Empty batteries and bike problems make the night rides especially tough. Of course, the relay teams exchange riders, and the individual riders take breaks. But the competition really takes it out of all of them. The early gray of dawn, the onset of a cold drizzle and clammy cold got to the riders. Most were determined to stick it out. Almost 23 hours have passed since the start of the race. Exhaustion became noticeable towards the end, especially on the steep stretches. The last rounds, the Swiss Jamis team is still the undisputed lead. The best lap time for the 12-kilometer course is 34 minutes. Switzerland's Jamis team wins Seefeld's 24-hour endurance race with 38 rounds. And Stenifel leads his Scott team to a good second place. Austria's Kaesler team comes in third. Best individual rider is Austria's Stefan Weiser with 23 rounds.
gravity that keeps you on the ground. Goodyear, used by NASA on the moon.
Engine problems? Don't fix it, swap it for a guaranteed remanufactured engine from Competition Motors with 10 branches and 150 agents countrywide. Competition Motors, the largest engine reconditioners in South Africa, will give you an instant engine exchange with quality workmanship and a guarantee up to 12 months or 20,000 kilometers, plus 6 months to pay finance facilities. For a new lease of life for your car, it's Competition Motors all the way.
Some things are still made for the individual. Michelle Herberlin.
Now, World Sport Year, a time to remember the men and women who set the standards in the early days of our sporting era. Can you believe it? But it wasn't until 1928 that women first competed in the Olympic track events.
On the track, women were now less indignant than outraged at being excluded from the Olympic Games. So, with comparable jingoism, they promoted their own ladies' international games in pigeon shooting grounds in Monte Carlo. After years of exclusion from competition, it was perhaps understandable that performances in the javelin, the low jump and the hurdles hardly shook the world. Early in the decade, English girls swept the board, but for many, it was only a passing interest. They tended to go home and get married. Maybe that was what was intended. Lord Deasy's, male president of the Women's Amateur Athletic Association, told them to lead clean and healthy lives because this was good for the race. At golf, women were beating men. With a stance like that, not to mention the cigarette-in-mouth nonchalance, I'm not surprised, particularly against a swing like this. On the other hand, motor racing shut no doors to women. The deal was, if you're good enough, you're welcome. Ivy Cummings brought her Sunbeam and joined in. But from then till now, there's only been a handful of outstanding women drivers.
China is a real powerhouse of sporting performance these days. New training methods, new world record setters seem to emerge from that enormous country every second week. And it was to China that the Formula One powerboaters were invited for round 7 of their World Championship, held on West Lake near Shanghai.
The Chinese national powerboat champion, Peng Win-Lu, has entered for Formula One. It's his first event, and he's very nervous. It's not surprising. The teams in Formula One now are highly refined. And the battle here will be between Michael Werner, the German, in number 7, and the defending world champion, Italian Guido Capellini. Werner has just a 3-point advantage over the Italian as the boats leave the pontoon. Capellini's teammate, Rogero, has snatched pole position, but it's Capellini down to turn 1 first. Former world champion Bocca in 2nd, and Rogero has the cowl on the back of his boat dislodged as he tackles another competitor. As race officials try to decide whether to stop the race with Rogero's cowl floating in the water, Capellini comes round in the lead one more time. Bocca very close behind, and Werner in 3rd. As the boats round the mark, Englishman Colin Jelf, in his first World Championship race, submarines. He's somewhat shaken, but uninjured. The race is brought to a stop and restarted. Once more, it's Capellini in the lead, and his fellow countryman Bocca pushing him very hard just behind. In 3rd, 4th and 5th are Elliott, Werner and Bertels, with Carlos Medana from Argentina challenging hard. But the challenge ends in disaster as the Argentinian flips out with a full 360-degree roll. He too is uninjured, the race is restarted, and once more it's Capellini in the lead and his challenger in the World Championship, Werner, close behind. But as the race comes to a close, it's Bertels and Elliott challenging for 2nd who come to a disastrous end. Both drivers are uninjured, but the boats are badly damaged. Elliott brought to shore, desperately disappointed. Capellini is awarded the race and 20 World Championship points. The teams now move to the United Arab Emirates for the final round of the Formula One World Championship. While Capellini is in the lead, he has to finish the race in Abu Dhabi to be sure of the world title. Werner has won more Grand Prix this year and could still snatch it from the Italian.
From the Chinese East Coast to the American East Coast, Long Island, New York, and the show-jumping event that rounds off America's glamorous summer season, the Hampton Classic from Bridgehampton. The village of tents surrounding the ring is like a little Fifth Avenue all of its own. Home away from home for the rich and the famous. That's film director Steven Spielberg, if you didn't recognize him. Let's join the final Grand Prix jump-off with Jeffrey Wells, last year's winner on Lufkin.
As we look at Lufkin and Jeffrey Wells. Jeffrey, last year's winner here. Let me remind you, today's Grand Prix is a member event of the Rolex National Grand Prix League, and the Hampton Classic is a benefit event for 3 outstanding charities: the Southampton Hospital, the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation, and the United States Equestrian Team.
So far, good through the first 3 fences of our demanding jump-off course. Jeffrey, with just 2 jumps to go, heads to fence number 9, and he's going to loop it inside here and make a long run. He could be clear. He's the leader already right now with no faults at all in a time of 39.70. Takes over the lead. Maybe Jeffrey Wells can make it 3 out of the last 4 years.
He set the standard so far. He's clear in 39.70. That's the target they'll all aim at now. Last year's winner, Jeffrey Wells and Lufkin. Next, into the jump-off. Quantum leap. Debbie Dolan Sweeney, I should say. A hopeful for Atlanta and a hopeful for the big prize here.
Yes, this is American Thoroughbred now. Let's see what our American horse can do. This one's by Secretariat, the famous racehorse. Debbie again just from right up the road in Long Island. Ooh, a hard run, but it stays up. She's still alive.
And the whoops of delight from the crowd here. A lot of supporters traveling down from Long Island to watch this.
Oh, and she's well ahead of the pace. If she can leave this last one up, she's going to be the winner. It's up. 38.28, and that's our winner, Debbie Dolan Sweeney in Quantum Leap.
Brett Schultz is back. We suspect his career will continue to be plagued by injuries.
When you mention the World Cup of Golf, you think of 2 Americans, Davis Love and Fred Couples. They've won it the last 3 years. But all over the world, the eliminators are taking place to see who will join them in China for the final. The Eastern qualifier to decide the last 4 teams was held on the stunning Mission Hills course in Thailand, right near the famous bridge on the River Kwai. By the final round, the Philippines and South Korea were well ahead of the rest, with Thailand, Sri Lanka, and Chinese Taipei battling for the last 2 spots.
Frank Minoza for a birdie. His partner, Pactaloran, has already taken 6. But that means they don't drop a shot on aggregate here. The Philippines remain at 4 under. Minoza birdie. Pactaloran bogey 6. But the Philippines in the lead. Kwang Soo Choi from the Republic of Korea, 3 under and just 1 shot off the lead. Remember the Koreans. Water and a bunker guarding this pin. Good shot. And you can see the territory out of which this golf club was cut and built. And when it blows here, you can see too that There isn't a great deal of protection. But happily today for the golfers, hardly any wind at all. Oh, Korea now share the lead. Choi to 2 under par on the Republic of Korea to 4 under, tied with the Philippines. There's the leaderboard showing that these two countries are 7 shots clear now of Sri Lanka, Chinese Taipei. Thailand and Singapore are 5 over par. It's going to be tight. Really 4 teams battling there for 2 places. Well hold. And the Republic of Korea at 4 under par. Kwang Soo Choi with his birdie there. Now his cousin has a birdie chance to move the Koreans into the clear lead on 5 under. The family partnership is working well here in Thailand. Korea moved to the top of the leaderboard on 5 under. Both Choi's making birdies there at the 16th. Choi, once again, will the putter work well for him? It does. The Koreans heading for China. Kwang Soo Choi out in 36, but back in 32. 4 birdies on that for a round of 68. The Republic of Korea in the clubhouse on 5 under.
Korea and the Philippines qualify safely. In the 3-way playoff, the Chinese Taipei team needed this putt to stop Thailand and Sri Lanka getting the last 2 places.
Well, would you believe it? The Chinese team Taipei were putting for an eagle and for a birdie, and they finished up with a birdie and a bogey, and they've lost their chance of going to China. Disappointment for them, but delight for Sri Lanka. Last year, but joint 3rd this year. And for the Thailand golfers, they had to sweat a bit before making sure of their place in the World Cup proper.
So Thailand happy. There are the 4 qualifiers: South Korea, Philippines, Thailand, and Sri Lanka. News now, the headline stories from around the world. And we stay in the Far East, where the race to host soccer's biggest tournament, the World Cup in 2002, has turned into a contest between South Korea and Japan. A delegation from FIFA, the soccer governing body, has been touring the 2 prospective venues. In Seoul, the capital of South Korea, President Kim Jong-sam kicked off in a friendly match against Saudi Arabia. The match was arranged to entertain the FIFA visitors, led by Horst Schmidt, Secretary General of the German Federation. It ended in a 1-1 draw. After the match, Horst Schmidt and the FIFA team went on a tour of the Korean facilities, which are pretty impressive. Many of them served during the 1988 Olympics, held in the city. After Seoul, the FIFA delegation arrived in Tokyo. The Japanese have a much bigger budget for their bid, over $5 billion compared to the $1.3 billion of the Koreans. But in these things, it's not always the money that counts. After his visit to Korea, Horst Schmidt admitted that he was impressed. The whole of the nation was behind this bid, he said. June the 1st next year is decision day. Meanwhile, the Chinese women, an explosive new force in athletics, are still making the headlines. They burst upon the scene a couple of years ago with new track world records that set a few eyebrows twitching. And at the Intercity Games in Beijing, their pole vaulter, Sun Ka-yoon, set a new pole vault world record of 4.23 meters. The previous record holder was the Czech Daniela Bartova. She had improved the world mark no less than 10 times in succession, but Ka-yoon put an end to that. Women's pole vault records have only been recognized since the start of the year, and the Chinese are already stamping their mark upon them. Finally, the girl from the chicken farm who has spread her wings and set sail around the world all on her own. 28-year-old Samantha Brewster grew up on a farm in Suffolk in England. But in England, you're never far from the sea. And Sam has been sailing since the age of 12. 3 years ago, she sailed round the world on the yacht Heath Insured with a crew of 14. But now she aims to do it on the same yacht, but solo. Most round-the-world races are from west to east to make use of the prevailing winds. Sam, however, will go from east to west non-stop, the only woman ever to attempt what is known as the toughest endeavor in yachting.
I like being on my own. I'm a bit of a loner, and the seclusion doesn't worry me. I think there'll be times when I'm lonely, but I've got the communications so I can talk to people. Less serious side of this area, we have Gutsy, who's been around before. He's going to help me this time to go the right way. While he's doing that, you can listen to some music.
Gutsy the gorilla. He looks a bit uncertain about the enterprise, probably thinking about all the little gorillas he left at home. Coming up next week, the World Cup of Golf. Fred Couples and Davis Love would love to win it again. But will they? And the very best action and goals from the French First Division. So join us then for the show that puts a premium on action. The champions, the challengers, the Super Bowl, the sideshows. You'll find them all here on Gillette World Sports Special.
Good evening. Do you feel at times as if you are in a prison of some sort or another? Perhaps your life, which was once buoyant and resilient, is now in chains of drudgery and boredom. Or perhaps the pressure of the world, with all its emphasis on the visible and material, has trapped you in a prison of cynicism and despair, denying the power of God to change a world, casting concrete and steel. Perhaps your prison is one of guilt, burdening you with the consequences of sins past, ever preventing you from knowing true forgiveness and freedom of heart and mind. The book of Acts tells us a story of Paul and Silas being stripped, beaten, and then thrown into prison with their feet fastened in the stocks. Let me read it to you. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken. At once, all the prison doors flew open and everybody's chains came loose. Isn't it amazing that Paul and Silas, in their own particular prison, and at the darkest hour of the night, found the peace and confidence to be praying and singing hymns to God? More than this, their confidence was not misplaced, because just then an earthquake shook the foundations of the prison, bursting open its doors and shaking the chains loose. Our lesson from this story tonight is the fact that by Christ's death on the cross and the power of his resurrection from the grave, every prison door is now able to be burst open. With the key of consecration, Christ unlocks the door of our drudgery. Consecrated to God, dedicated to the service and worship of him, every moment of our lives becomes an opportunity to fulfill his purposes, just as Paul and Silas later used this experience to bring their jailer to faith. With the key of his Spirit, Christ unlocks the door of our material prisons, revealing the power of a God to heal the sick, drive out demons, and send gifts of his Spirit to encourage and build us up. Gifts of the Spirit no less real than the visible world about us, and no less powerful than the earthquake which burst Paul and Silas's prison doors open. With the key of forgiveness, Christ has freed us forever from the guilt which threatens to cut us off from his love and the love of those around us. Consecrate yourselves afresh to God tonight, confident that He has the power to bring joy and purpose to your life, power to transform the world about you, and power to forgive you, power to free you from your prison. Good night.
That shrewd chatterer should be caught so shamefully I simply cannot believe. That's right. It's just like Uncle Billy says. Right, Danny?
Right. I never believe it. Is that so? Well, whether you believe it or not, I couldn't care less. If you all go to Mr. Brown's house and see it with your own eyes, you'll understand what I'm saying. News, news!
Don't know what you're talking about.
Hey, let's suppose I tell your fortune, eh? See, I can see the future, too. And if you don't answer my questions, I predict you'll be needing new kneecaps.
Oh, Marty, we're your friends. Maybe it'll make you feel better if you, told us how you felt. Unburden yourself. We won't think you're any less of a man if you do, will we, Lance?
Do you want to know how I really feel? I'm absolutely stuffed, okay? And I wouldn't mind getting a bit of shut-eye, okay?
Oh, well, I think you should sleep in Lance's bed tonight, then.
Why would you sleep in Lance's bed? If you paid me, I wouldn't know what I'd find.
Oh, how insensitive of me. It would only remind you of Greta, wouldn't it, Mum?
No. Come on. I'll change the seats and everything, man.
Don't let me go. I want to stay forever. Home and away with you each day. A birdie in the forest that hops around and sings. A duck with wobbly water. A beak that's like a spade. A peacock with his tail.
We're talking to Benji from Caught in the Act. Thanks for joining us, Benji. We're talking lyrics. Can you tell us, do you think that lyrics should always have a meaning to songs?
Meaningful lyrics. I think, I think you can do whatever you like. I think if you just want to have, show something that's fun, you just show it's fun. And if you want to really write down something, the message to bring it across, like really serious, then...
The tension is really rising in today's episode of Huckleberry Finn as poor Jim is captured once again. The tension keeps on mounting on Mini TV when an old enemy tries to kill Jack in today's episode of Cadillacs and Dinosaurs.
Net toe dink jy kan ontspan, is dit tyd vir robotredding en daar is 'n noodgeval op die see. Dan gaan jou bloeddruk sommer deur die dak skiet met vandag se episode van Zatman.
Charnos, toe sê vir haar sy moet niks oopmaak nie. Sy moet wag tot ons ook by is.
Jy weet sy sal nie na my luister nie, Jack.
Ja. Dit beteken dit sal te laat wees om 'n teenmiddel te gaan soek wanneer ons eers daar kom.
Kyk Jack, die donker bout. Ons kan nou na daai blom gaan soek en dit vanaand al in die stad hê.
Dis al die tyd jy wat dit beplan het, Dr. Bosader.
Ek het die gate onder die olievelde geboor sodat die olie in die see kan vloei. Kom nou, wees nou 'n slag eerlik. Dink jy daar is enigiemand op aarde wat so slim is om so 'n boosaardige plan uit te kan dink?
Jy's heeltemal reg, Bosader. Dis net jy wat so iets sal doen.
Rowley, I have a plan, and I need your help.
As long as I'm not going to be arrested.
Well, on the nobody changes much theory, I think you get parole.
Okay, fire ahead. How can I help?
Dis uitstekend. Oké, hoe voel je, Alling? Lyk dit, dink jy dit werk? Ek het die idee, iets begin dalk roer daaronder. Hoe gaan jy aan, Shelley?
'n klein bietjie. Bam. Bam.
Bam.
Het jy te veel televisie gekyk of wat, hè?
Haar telefoon en adres, hè?
Ja, maar wie is hy?
Leo, sal ek nou jou vingers vir jou aanlos vir die check?
Nee, hou op, asseblief toch.
As julle die land wil opbou, sal julle maar self al die werk moet doen. Die militêre regering keur die ondernemings en hou die vordering daarvan dop. Wie om teen die reëls van die militêre regering verset, word onmiddellik ontslag.
Will be discharged.
Okay. 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 Niks Nazis here? No. You must learn to speak your mind. That's democracy.
My friend I've caught very well, and it just I needed to I just had some sort of inner strength to carry on, and I had to do it for Gary's sake and for my own sake.
Indeed, and do you now feel that justice has been done?
Yes, in a way. I mean, these kids are young kids, and they're going to be in prison for a long time. So hopefully, the 25 years or so they're going to be in prison, if they serve that long, hopefully they will have turned a corner, and hopefully they've seen, you know, that they have done wrong in the past, and hopefully they will improve their lives somewhat, and when they come out of prison, they will be able to do positive things with their lives.
Indeed, you even got an apology today from Akins. Did that mean something to you?
Yeah, I think it did. With Andre Akins, the people that have dealt with him, my attorney and his attorney, they seem to feel that Andre has turned a corner in his own life, and he is truly sorry for what he did, and hopefully he can now look forward to taking exams and bettering himself and realise what he has done wrong.
And his mother also apologised to you. Did you feel a certain amount of sympathy for her?
Well, it must be hard for any mother, no matter what situations are at home. It must be hard for any mother to see their son in prison gear with chains around their feet, and knowing they're going away to prison for a long time. And I'm sure that, you know, obviously she does feel for her son. And it's hard to upset her, you know, even if they weren't that close, or, I mean, I don't know the situation, but, I mean, after all, you know, she's a mother. And, I mean, I felt for her as well, yeah.
And Margaret, do you think that now you can get your life back to some kind of normality again?
My answer to that is, what is normal? The last 2 years, I've been to and froing from America to England to Florida, and you never know what's around the corner, and hopefully, yes, I can get on with my life. It will never be the same. I've got to rebuild my life without Gary, but with the help of my friends and my family, Gary's family, and my mum, hopefully that we can all, you know, see the future, you know, on a brighter aspect.
Government workers across America have been sent home today after President Clinton and opposition Republican leaders failed to agree on the country's budget. The government's authority to borrow money and extend its overdraft ran out last night. Last-minute talks failed to end the deadlock. A survey in a leading American newspaper, The Washington Post, shows that most people blame the Republicans for the shutdown. Our senior United States correspondent Jeremy Thompson reports.
News of America's shutdown even reached outer space.
The shuttle crew kept informed.
40% of the federal workforce will be sent home.
And back on Earth, White House workers were soon on their way home, as the closure struck at the very heart of government. 3/4 of the president's own staff were laid off, including butlers, chefs and gardeners. Around 800,000 non-essential civil servants began leaving their offices, victims of a political deadlock over the nation's budget. And many felt Congress were more to blame than the president.
Well, my sympathies are with the president. I think the Republican Congress has it wrong.
President Clinton is right in sticking with Social Security.
President Clinton was quick to harness the support, castigating the Republican-led Congress for the crisis and sympathizing with the federal workers.
I will do everything I can to see that they receive back pay and that their families do not suffer because of this. But it is my solemn responsibility to stand against a budget plan that is bad for America and to stand up for a balanced budget that is good for America. And that is exactly what I intend to do. Thank you.
While the president dug in to protect his popular programs, the Republicans still insisted on deep cuts to balance the budget.
We have every interest in doing two things, getting the government back to work and balancing the budget. And we want to do both. We don't want to fight between the two.
But emergency meetings between White House and Congress staff merely underlined the differences that divide them. Meanwhile, government staff headed off on leave and waited for the politicians to resolve the crisis. Even the Statue of Liberty took an enforced holiday as her curators were reluctantly shipped ashore. Fortunately for the animals at Washington Zoo, essential staff stayed on to feed them, even if visitors were shut out. Jeremy Thompson, Sky News, Washington.
An RAF technician has discovered a massive blunder by an aircraft contractor hired to service 16 Tornado fighters. It will cost up to £100 million to repair the damage to the planes. A Dorset-based company won the contract after undercutting British Aerospace's £11 million bid by £4 million.
The F-3 Tornado is a multi-million-pound aircraft, vital to Britain's air defences. Servicing the jet planes is a lucrative contract for the private sector, but today's Defence Committee report says instead of saving money, the outside contractors landed the MOD with a massive repair bill instead. The committee says it was astonished to discover the government had paid for work on 8 Tornadoes without properly checking the end results first. Repairs costing an estimated £100 million were needed. The cross-party committee concluded this deplorable incident should be a salutary and timely lesson about the risks in contracting out such work. But an MOD spokeswoman said the case had been exceptional and one they were contesting with the company. The report comes as concern grows over the future of the £40 billion Eurofighter project. It's emerged the Defence Secretary Michael Portillo is to hold talks with his German counterpart in a bid to break the deadlock over the Anglo-German programme. But the government remains confident agreement can be reached. Emma Simpson, Sky News.
Robert Maxwell's widow has told a court how she searched in vain to find a note from her husband the night after he disappeared. Dr. Betty Maxwell said she wondered if anything sinister might have happened. She was giving evidence at the Old Bailey, where her sons Ian and Kevin are on trial for conspiracy to defraud the Maxwell pension fund.
Just over 3 years since the death of her husband, Betty Maxwell arrived at court today to give her evidence into the collapse of his business empire. The 73-year-old widow told the court how Maxwell had groomed his children to succeed him in the business. Kevin in particular, she said, had been considered the heir apparent. But although he often talked of retiring, Maxwell had resented them taking any initiative. But Mrs. Maxwell also described returning to the family yacht, the Lady Gillette, the night after her husband's death. She said, "I remember at the time I thought it was an accidental death. Then I began to wonder if it could be something more sinister." She described searching her husband's cabin until 5 a.m. "I wanted to find a handwritten note Bob had left for me," she said. "I wondered if I could find some kind of clue." Also in court today was Kevin Maxwell's wife, Pandora. She described her father-in-law as a daunting, charismatic and frightening figure. She said the relationship between Kevin and his father was strained, but that he had broken down and wept when he heard his father's body had been found. She recalled how after his funeral, Kevin was determined the business would survive. He was very optimistic the group would be savable, she said. There was no sense of impending disaster. Today, the trial entered its 103rd day. Kevin Maxwell denies 2 charges of conspiring to defraud the pension funds by using £122 million worth of shares in Israeli companies. Ian denies a single conspiracy charge. Leila Day Belgay, Sky News, Central London.
Quick look now at the financial markets, and the FTSE 100 share index closed at 3,547.9. That's up 11.1. And over on Wall Street, there's the Dow Jones down 1.09 at 4,000. What a light shining on this, so I can just about read it. 4,871.81.
Well done. Protesters have hit on a new way to try to stop a planned bypass in Berkshire. They're constructing a network of tunnels in which to hide when the security men move in. They're even planning to take down breathing equipment in case they get buried alive.
In a site of special scientific interest along the route of the bypass, makeshift camps and tree houses have already been built. But as well as scaling the heights, protesters are plumbing the depths in their bid to stop the road. It's like something from The Great Escape, a tunnel too low and narrow to turn round in, but dry and well shored up. It's been built using the most primitive of methods, 2 months of hard back-breaking work in very confined spaces. All the earth has been moved by hand with the help of an occasional skateboard. When the time comes, the campaigners plan to seal the entrances and stay underground for as long as they can.
Hopefully they won't bring heavy machinery above here, because they'll know that there's people underground.
One man who didn't want to be identified says he's determined to stop Britain's road building programme.
I'm willing to take the risk in order to protect the planet. Maybe sort of semi-token, but you've got to try and make some attempt.
Jerry cans full of water are already being stocked up in the tunnels.
The campaigners are planning to bring lots of supplies down here, including oxygen cylinders, to last them some time. And when these entrances are hidden, it will be very difficult to find and remove them. Andrew Moore, Sky News, in the tunnels near Newbury.
A 33-year-old man made legal history today by bringing what's believed to be the oldest personal injury claim before a British court. Guy Parks from Willenhall near Wolverhampton was awarded £1.25 million damages for a medical blunder shortly after his birth in 1962. He was left a spastic quadriplegic after his GP failed to diagnose dehydration.
After several years of wrangling, relief for a family who've campaigned and cared tirelessly for their son. Described as more than a model mother, Anne Parks has spent the past 33 years looking after Guy since a medical blunder left him handicapped. In 1962, the family doctor failed to diagnose dehydration in the days after he was born. He was left suffering from spastic quadriplegia, but the Parks didn't realise they could sue until 1986.
Fate was on our side, or someone was on our side, because everything was still there, all the details were still there, to confirm everything I'd actually said to the solicitors. And then it was just a matter of getting the different experts, all the different opinions, until they had no case to answer. It was clear liability.
Medical experts believe Guy's case is truly unique, saying they're unaware of any other children with the same condition who survived into manhood.
It's a living memory to you the whole time, and I don't think any mother would not feel bitter over what had happened. Guy lost his life, really, except to stay alive, but he lost what we would call any resemblance of a life.
The Parks now plan to move to a more suitable house where they can rest assured that Guy's future is in safe hands. Ian Leckie, Sky News, in the West Midlands.
There's been criticism of the way that hospitals treat elderly patients with hip fractures. The local government watchdog, the Audit Commission, says that many patients who need hip operations face a long wait for treatment and receive poor aftercare. It also claims that junior doctors are carrying out operations unsupervised.
Marjorie Witter has osteoporosis, fragile bones. She's fractured both her hips, but in both instances it took doctors some time to realise this. In fact, with her left hip, after 7 months of pain, she had to pay for a private consultation to discover the cause.
When I went to see the specialist private and he sent me for another x-ray, I'd already had one which said there was nothing wrong, was shocked. I couldn't believe it, that I'd been walking around for 7 months and my hip was fractured.
According to the Audit Commission, 57,000 people have hip fractures each year, most of them elderly. Yet many hospitals are giving poor treatment, keeping patients waiting too long in casualty and for operations, and allowing such operations to be performed by unsupervised junior doctors and anaesthetists. The Commission says more needs to be done to organise the care of elderly patients.
It's almost as if people's thinking has to be turned on its head. Most of us know an elderly person who's had this happen, and all too often an excellent operation's benefit can be lost by the way that it's managed.
Both the National Osteoporosis Society and Age Concern agree, saying elderly people are worried about getting treatment on the NHS. Nicola Hill, Sky News.
This is Sky News Tonight, still to come. The featherweight fights back. Doing well, the baby who weighed just 17 ounces at birth.
And Bowie's back. We find out what the 70s idol has got to offer 20 years on. Welcome back. A tiny premature baby who was given little hope of survival at birth was discharged from hospital today. Blair Manns weighed just 17 ounces when he was born in Bristol last May. Now, 6 months later, he still only weighs 6 pounds 12 ounces, but he's back home and expected to live a normal life.
This was the homecoming of a miracle baby named Blair Manns. Doctors only gave him a 5% chance of surviving when he was born 22 weeks premature at Southmead Hospital in Bristol. He weighed just 17 ounces and was just 8 inches long, equivalent to a pound of sugar. But today, 6 months later, after hours of care from doctors and nurses, lots of prayers and a great deal of good fortune, Blair came home to his home in Gloucester. Parents Boyden and Sarah Manns were greeted by family and friends. They explained that Blair will have to be on oxygen for about a year while his lungs fully develop. And they couldn't thank the medical profession enough for what they had done.
They've sat us down, they've been very straightforward and honest, and whatever we've asked for, they've told us. And we really cannot fault them. They've been absolutely superb all along. Southmead have been brilliant in their follow-up to us as friends, and Gloucestershire, since we walked through the door, have given us all the sort of loves and hugs that we needed, and that's carried on both from Southmead, who fought for him initially, and Gloucestershire, who brought him through the last 4 months.
As Blair begins his life away from the hospital, the Manns family have all offered their services, meaning there'll be no shortage of babysitters and apparently no shortage of toys either. Ian Seymour, Sky News, Gloucester.
David Bowie has been back on stage in Britain tonight, his first tour in 5 years. Bowie, who first made his name in the 70s, is sharing the bill with Morrissey, a star of the 80s, and both of them continue to influence present-day bands. Here's a taste of Bowie performing at Wembley just a short time ago. With me now in the studio to discuss David Bowie is the features editor of Melody Maker, Paul Lester. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening.
So is he any good still?
He's very good still, yeah, surprisingly, because, I mean, you know, at his advanced age, you'd think that he would have gone downhill, but no, he's come back with a very good album, probably his best for 15 years.
He certainly doesn't look any different, but so you're telling us that he's definitely not yesterday's man?
No, I think he's been cryogenically preserved. Well, there's some treatment going on that we don't know about, but yeah, he's not one of those forgotten heroes. I don't know how he's done it, but he has. As I say, he's made his best record probably since 1979 because he's got back together with this chap called Brian Eno that used to be in Roxy Music, and they made a very modern, sleek electronic funk record.
And this is the album that's all produced with computer technology and goodness knows
yeah,
what?
there's all sorts of extracurricular kind of gadgetry being employed, and David Bowie's into all that multimedia stuff. He always has been.
And he's more interested, I gather, in producing songs that he likes. Doesn't care so much whether they're commercially successful, is that right?
Well, I mean, he probably says that. I mean, just to cover his tracks, just in case nobody that happens to like the current record. I think he did pretty well. I don't think he's not going to do many hits in the current the shows he's doing at the moment, because I think he wants to put the past behind him. I'd imagine there'd be a lot of disappointed people in the audience expecting him to do Heroes or, you know, Ziggy Stardust or whatever.
Did he still have a great following amongst the people who knew him back in the 70s?
Yeah, well, I imagine a lot of those people, though, are probably at home with, you know, babies and babysitters and kind of alimonies and palimonies and all those sort of things. So, you know, a lot of them won't be able to go out, but there's still quite a lot of young people there as well. He's still exerting an influence on young bands.
I mean, the Beatles are reforming. The Rolling Stones still go out on the road. Do you think that perhaps some of these artists should think to themselves, well, let's preserve a little bit of mystery still. Let's not carry on performing. Let's people think of us how we were 20 years ago.
Yeah, they don't seem to be able to do that. I mean, I suppose one is meant to, the fashionable thing is to say that they should give up when they're 29. But I mean, you know, I think some of them are still doing valid stuff. I think it's a bit creepy when you kind of do the beyond the grave thing that Queen and the Beatles are doing. But no, I mean, David Bowie's still got credible things to say, and good luck to him. I mean, I hope I look that good when I'm his age.
Does he appeal to people in the sort of 16 to 25 age group?
I think he does, actually, yeah. In fact, there is a new movement sweeping the nation you may not know about yet, of young bands. They are actually looking to his late 70s stuff, which was, in fact, very ahead of its time. And even Blur, for example, to name one of the biggest groups in the country, their new album is very Bowie-influenced.
He's got a support act, Morrissey, who I confess I haven't heard of, I'm sorry to say. Who is he?
Yeah, well, he's kind of the 80s Morrissey in terms of the impact he had on miserable, alienated, acne-ridden, used in bedsits across the country. Although he didn't go through the same amount of chameleonic changes as Bowie. But yeah, Morrissey and Bowie are kind of a piece. Morrissey never had the influence that Bowie did because he never made it in America.
But Bowie, back with a punch.
Back with a kind of a punch which doesn't knock you out, but it certainly stuns you momentarily or something.
Thank you very much indeed. I changed from Bowie to Bowie halfway through that interview and back again.
I noticed. We've got somebody from the Morrissey fan club on for you, but I'm sure you can deal with them later. Quick look at the weather. Tomorrow's going to be another dull, wet day for most of northern and western Europe, with a belt of rain extending from central Britain east to the Baltic states, and another running through central Iberia to the Alps. In between southern Britain, France, and Low Countries and northern Germany will be showery.
I'll be back, top of the hour, with more news. See you then.
the Sky Television Network.
The truth about Diana, she gives her side of the royal marriage breakup. Common sense policies or tired ideas, preparations for the Queen's speech. And Call of the Wild, Clough says he wants the Wolves job.
This is Sky News on the Hour with Vivian Krieger.
Good evening. The Princess of Wales is to speak out about the breakup of her marriage in a television interview next week. Neither Prince Charles nor the Queen knew of the interview until this morning, even though it was recorded earlier this month. It's the first time she's spoken openly about her life with the Windsors, her marriage and her plans for the future.
It was the smoking gun in the princess's arsenal, a television interview, her one big weapon in the ongoing battle to win the hearts of the British public. News of the interview was released as she visited Broadmoor Hospital.
It therefore gives me great pleasure to formally open the Richard Dad Centre.
But it's her innermost thoughts which people will want to hear. The interview is set to cover every stage of her life, her family, her separation, and her future plans. Already the project is surrounded by controversy as it emerged that officials at Buckingham Palace, the Prince of Wales, and even the Queen herself were unaware that the princess is going public. The only reaction from the Buckingham Palace press office, we were informed about this whole thing only this morning. But to put it mildly, officials here are miffed. One senior royal source is describing the princess as dangerous and vexatious. She telephoned a senior courtier at breakfast time to drop her bombshell. It's a birthday present he could do without. The Prince of Wales informed of his wife's decision while on a 4-day visit to Germany.
One question, Your Highness. What do you think of Lady Di's decision to give an interview?
But many will point to Prince Charles's interview with Jonathan Dimbleby on television last year as the opening salvo in the latest PR battle. But then the princess was given advance notice and the opportunity to contribute to the programme, an opportunity she declined. But this time she has gone behind everyone's back. Who is advising her is not clear, but this is certainly a high-risk strategy, a sink-or-swim strategy. With talk of a divorce from Prince Charles now imminent, the princess may wish to clear the air. It'll be her opportunity in the week she travels to Argentina to put her side of the story to the public and to show that she has a serious role to play. If they're not convinced, one of the most popular women this century could face a public backlash. It's a gamble that is now out of the princess's hands. Simon McCoy, Sky News.
The political agenda in the run-up to the general election will be announced during the Queen's speech tomorrow. John Major has described it as common sense policies. Labour has dismissed it as a ragbag of tired right-wing ideas.
In his traditional Eve of Queen's speech address to the Carlton Club, Mr Major promised a positive common sense programme. Earlier, senior government sources had confirmed there'd be 15 major bills, 2 more than the last session of Parliament, a clear attempt to deflect criticism that the government has run out of steam. With a maximum of 18 months until the next general election, the new session of Parliament will be dominated by pre-poll skirmishing over opted-out schools and cracking down on crime.
All the way through the parliamentary session, the Labour Party will be stuck between trying to say things which they think will be popular and getting Conservatives to think of voting for them, or sticking to their true policies, which are blind opposition to what is sensible.
If the Tories want to draw clear blue water on in terms of policy, then that's welcomed by us. But the problem is that the policies that they're putting forward in the Queen's speech are not going to be the ones that this country needs.
And though the government is promising common sense change and radical reform, the Queen's speech won't contain any measures which haven't been well trailed in advance. The programme of new laws may make Tory MPs feel good about the political fight against Labour, but it will be the tax and spending decisions in the budget in 2 weeks' time which will be more important in terms of restoring their political fortunes. Paul Bromley, Sky News, Westminster.
The prosecution has accused Rose West of wanting the jury at her trial to believe she saw no evil, heard no evil, and spoke no evil. At the start of his closing speech, Mr. Brian Levison QC also described Fred West's suicide as his greatest gift to his wife. He said Fred West could exonerate his wife without being cross-examined. Mrs. West denies 10 charges of murdering young girls and women. The ecstasy tablet taken by teenager Leah Betts was not contaminated. Neither were 2 other tablets retrieved by police at her birthday party. Tonight, 18-year-old Leah remains critically ill at a hospital in Chelmsford.
Visiting Leah Betts in hospital tonight, friends of the unconscious teenager will be struggling, like doctors, to understand why she reacted so badly to 1 tablet of ecstasy. Blood and urine samples have revealed the drug was not contaminated.
The only substance that they have been able to identify has been ecstasy and its metabolite, that is, the substance to which it is broken down. There has been no other abnormal substances found from the samples that were taken.
Leah was studying A-levels at Basildon College. Students there have condemned drug taking and said it is a problem locally.
Drugs are diabolical around here, it's just like full of them. It's like the whole place is just full of drugs.
Like someone's forced me to take them, but just said no. So they left me. It's Basildon, it's completely full of drugs.
It's so bad. I think everyone in college is thinking about her.
Detectives believe the ecstasy could have originated from Raquel's nightclub in Basildon. The club's managers say they'll hand over all their video footage from surveillance cameras to help the investigation. Police do have 1 new lead. They seized 22 similar ecstasy tablets in a raid in Southend just days before Leah fell unconscious.
With a man having been arrested and on bail, we obviously know who that person is, and we'll be talking to him again.
Although it's now known the drug Leah took was not contaminated, doctors believe the message to youngsters is still strong. If Leah can fall unconscious after taking just 1 tablet, so too can anyone else who experiments with ecstasy. Anna Watting, Sky News, Essex.
A mother who left her children home alone has been jailed after leaving them behind when she went on holiday to Spain. She flew to Benidorm last August. Police visited the woman's house on Merseyside and found her 12-year-old daughter cooking a meal for 2 other children aged 7 and 5. The woman, who can't be named for legal reasons, admitted 3 charges of child abandonment at Liverpool Crown Court. A teenager has been jailed for 27 years for the murder of a British tourist in Florida. Gary Colley from Yorkshire was shot dead during a bungled robbery. The attack horrified holidaymakers and prompted a police crackdown in the state.
Gary Colley was murdered at a highway rest stop in northern Florida just over 2 years ago. The Yorkshireman had been sleeping with his partner Margaret Jagger in their hire car when armed robbers approached them. They tried to drive off, but the attackers opened fire. Andra Akins fired the shot that killed Mr. Colley. He was just 14 at the time. He apologised to Margaret Jagger, saying, "I'm very sorry. I dedicate my life to you." He was sentenced to 27 years in prison. Earlier this month, another teenager, John Billy Joe Crumity, was jailed for life for his part in the killing. And a third, Deron Spear, got 8 years for being their getaway driver. Margaret Jagger was clearly relieved after a 2-year wait for justice.
Hopefully today, this chapter in my life has eventually come to an end. I feel that eventually justice has been done, and hope that Deron Spear, John Crumity and Andra Akins realise their wrongdoings and that they are beginning to rebuild their lives in positive ways.
Gary Colley's murder was the 9th in a series of killings that badly damaged Florida's £20 billion a year tourist industry. It prompted the state to post armed security guards at roadside rest stops. David Kermode, Sky News.
Still to come on Sky News, the boy who burst through the bubble to lead a normal life.
Let nobody die alone. Support hospice. Special and loving care for those for whom there is no cure. But in death, dignity and peace.
toddler has emerged from a plastic bubble which has been his life-saving prison for the past year. Aaron Nawaz has been allowed home after winning a battle against a deficiency in his immune system.
After a year-long wait, little Aaron at home in Middlesbrough is able at last to hold the hand of the brother who saved his life. Aaron has spent the last 12 months in a special airtight room, locked away from the outside world. His rare illness has meant the slightest infection could have killed him. It was a bone marrow transplant from his brother Hansa that has finally set him free. A year ago, Aaron was desperately ill. Doctors diagnosed a dysfunctional immune system, and his effective imprisonment began. His world has been just one sterile room where his mother and medical staff were the only ones allowed in. The bone marrow transplant was the turning point. When little Aaron arrived at Newcastle's General Hospital a year ago, doctors were worried he may not have lasted through the night. But despite a bout of pneumonia that nearly killed him, he's proved to be a tough little fighter.
Today, when I brought him home at first, he just looked around and cried because to be isolated and then to be brought into a house, and there was so much for him, and like I've got a lot of ornaments and things, and he went straight for him, smashed him on the floor, and I thought, well, I'm going to have to move everything, and he just loves it and he won't sleep because he's so excited.
It'll be a few months yet before Aaron gets the all clear. Until then, the family home must be kept spotless. But for the first time in his short life, Aaron can look forward to living in the big wide world. Gerard Tubb, Sky News in Middlesbrough.
The Brussels Commission has been accused of passing the buck on Euro budget fraud. It's blamed waste and mismanagement on European Union governments, including Britain. A new report suggests fraud could be costing taxpayers throughout Europe almost £2 billion. It's led to a row at Westminster.
Fish, fruit and vegetables, all ripe for fraud. 70,000 tons of tuna from Thailand arrived in Europe unchecked. The cargo was disguised as a different type of fish so that less money had to be paid in tariff duties. Labour wants more to be done to combat fraud.
This government has a scandalous record of not taking up funds available to counter fraud and of opposing increases in the European Union anti-fraud budget.
The government says it will tackle the problem.
We want to further strengthen the auditors' authority, get other member states interested, and get financial penalties in place to crack down on this, because really it's not good enough. It discredits everything European.
And the European Commission says the level of waste is a drop in the ocean.
To suggest that widespread practices are going on in all countries of the European Union is ridiculous. The fact is that the best estimates of loss of funds in these ways amounts to no more than about 1% of the overall budget.
But that's done nothing to placate the Tory Eurosceptics who have renewed their demand for a scrapping of Europe's whole system of food and farm subsidies. Sophie McGarrigle, Sky News.
President Clinton has accused the opposition Republicans of not using their common sense in the dispute which has closed down much of America's government offices. The two sides have failed to agree on the country's budget. A survey in a leading American newspaper, The Washington Post, showed that most people blame the Republicans for the shutdown. Our senior United States correspondent, Jeremy Thompson, reports.
News of America's shutdown even reached outer space. The shuttle crew kept informed.
40% of the federal workforce will be sent home.
And back on Earth, White House workers were soon on their way home, as the closure struck at the very heart of government. 3/4 of the president's own staff were laid off, including butlers, chefs and gardeners. Around 800,000 non-essential civil servants began leaving their offices, victims of a political deadlock over the nation's budget. And many felt Congress were more to blame than the president.
Well, my sympathies are with the president. I think the Republican Congress has it wrong.
President Clinton is right in sticking with Social Security.
President Clinton was quick to harness the support, castigating the Republican-led Congress for the crisis and sympathizing with the federal workers.
I will do everything I can to see that they receive back pay and that their families do not suffer because of this. But it is my solemn responsibility to stand against a budget plan that is bad for America and to stand up for a balanced budget that is good for America. And that is exactly what I intend to do. Thank you.
While the president dug in to protect his popular programs, the Republicans still insisted on deep cuts to balance the budget.
We have every interest in doing two things, getting the government back to work and balancing the budget. And we want to do both. We don't want to fight between the two.
But emergency meetings between White House and Congress staff merely underline the differences that divide them. Meanwhile, government staff headed off on leave and waited for the politicians to resolve the crisis. Even the Statue of Liberty took an enforced holiday as her curators were reluctantly shipped ashore. Fortunately for the animals at Washington Zoo, essential staff stayed on to feed them, even if visitors were shut out. Jeremy Thompson, Sky News, Washington.
A man who was left a quadriplegic after a medical blunder at birth has made legal history today. Guy Parks, who's now 33, has been awarded £1.25 million in damages. His GP failed to diagnose dehydration shortly after he was born.
After several years of wrangling, relief for a family who've campaigned and cared tirelessly for their son. Described as more than a model mother, Anne Parks has spent the past 33 years looking after Guy since a medical blunder left him handicapped. In 1962, the family doctor failed to diagnose dehydration in the days after he was born. He was left suffering from spastic quadriplegia, but the Parks didn't realise they could sue until 1986.
Fate was on our side, or someone was on our side, because everything was still there, all the details were still there, to confirm everything I'd actually said to the solicitors. And then it was just a matter of getting the different experts, all the different opinions, until they had no case to answer. It was clear liability.
Medical experts believe Guy's case is truly unique, saying they're unaware of any other children with the same condition who survived into manhood.
It's a living memory to you the whole time, and I don't think any mother would not feel bitter over what had happened. Guy lost his life, really, except to stay alive, but he lost what we would call any resemblance of a life.
The Parks now plan to move to a more suitable house where they can rest assured that Guy's future is in safe hands. Ian Leckie, Sky News, in the West Midlands.
Coming up on Sky News, we'll have the sport, including why Gaza plans to help England roll over the Swiss. And the man who calls himself the People's Champion explains why he, and not Bruno, is the best.
Tonight is a big night. Eddie and Toomey have the final question for you in the Telephone Quiz Viewers competition. Don't you miss that one. Gift voucher for diamond jewelry worth
we met through our sisters. They
Bit
were
of
the
matchmaking.
matchmakers.
Yeah, I'm sure.
The best part is we spent the first night of our wedding in our in-laws' bed.
Well, I don't know if that's good or bad, personally. I mean, you know, who am I to pass comment?
Welcome back. It's time for the sports news with Steve.
Viv, thanks very much. Hello there. It would be one of the most remarkable comebacks in football. Brian Clough says he wants to return to the game as manager of Wolves, in a move that's even surprised his wife, one of the game's most colourful and controversial characters, who quit Nottingham Forest and football back in May 1993, says he's keen to be Graham Taylor's successor at Molineux. He said the FA didn't allow him to precede or succeed Taylor as the England manager, but he wouldn't mind following him at Wolves. His wife Barbara responded by saying, "I can't believe he's serious. I think he must have had his tongue firmly in his cheek." Well, let's watch this space, eh? Now, on the international front, England continue their build-up to next year's European finals with a tough test against one of the early qualifiers, Switzerland, at Wembley. Paul Gascoigne is recalled after injury, and while he'll once again be the centre of attention, another young midfielder will hope to continue his early promise in an England shirt.
You just get the feeling that whatever young Jamie Redknapp puts his mind to at the moment, he'll succeed.
I don't think I could ask for more at the moment. Liverpool are doing well, and it's been my third cap now, so I'm absolutely delighted.
He's part of a refreshing England midfield that, given time, will surely work. The combination with his Liverpool colleague McManaman seems set to take the national side all the way to the European Championship.
I wouldn't say we're getting telepathic with each other, but I do feel that I know where he is when we play for Liverpool. It's just, I think if you look at the balls I play, I reckon 90% of them are in. He's always in good positions to give him the ball, and he understands, I want to give it to him, and I feel he is that dangerous that you've got to get him on the ball. Players like him and Paul Gascoigne, you've got to get them on the ball to do their stuff.
Their young legs will help those prone to injury alongside them. Gaz has cleared his head for this one, but he must keep it and use his skills that still give him centre stage.
I love playing with him against Colombia. It was, I think we worked well together, and Robert Lee as well has been playing very well this year for Newcastle, and Steve McManaman on the other side of me. So it's I think it's exciting. It's an exciting team. I think hopefully we can do really well tomorrow.
England do need a decent display, but do remember, patience is the word, and the long-term prospect of the European Championship glory, the real goal. Mark Saggers, Sky News.
Now, mixed fortunes for two of Britain's under-21 football teams. Congratulations, first of all, to Scotland, who qualified for the quarter-finals of the European Championships after a 1-0 win over San Marino. Valentino with an own goal there, giving the Scots victory. But England have missed out on a place in the last 8. That despite beating Austria 2-1 at Middlesbrough. That's because Portugal have beaten the Republic of Ireland 3-1 to win Group 6 and so qualify. So all England's efforts at the Riverside Stadium came to nothing, but at least the players did all they could on the night by winning their final game. Man of the match, Neil Shipley there at Southampton, scoring the decisive goal in the first half against Austria. Liverpool's Robbie Fowler got the other. In rugby union, Western Samoa have lost their final build-up match against their one-off test against Scotland on Saturday. They were beaten 43-9 by the Northern Midlands. Elsewhere, the Irish provincial side, Connaught, have beaten an international touring side for the first time in their history after a 27-5 victory over Fiji. Ireland played the Fijians in Dublin on Saturday. And New Zealand have bounced back from their shock test defeat by France at the weekend with a 55-point thrashing of the French select team. Jonah Lomu scoring twice as the tourists ran in 8 tries in that one. And the side that beat the All Blacks in last June's World Cup final, South Africa, have been getting down to some serious training ahead of their match with England at Twickenham, also on Saturday.
Whatever they do and wherever they go in the next 3.5 years, South Africa will wear the world crown. For a team that fought so hard for such an historic victory and delighted a nation, it should still be a matter of pride. Yet somehow the Springboks clearly feel they have something more to prove.
It's history, it's gone, and we know that it was a fairy tale, a dream, and we've woken up now.
It's quite nice to know that people recognize me as a good winger, but it's difficult to stay there, and it's hard. It's more hard work to put in. It's like staying the world champions.
South Africa will field just one survivor from the side that lost to England at Twickenham 3 years ago, and for players like Joos van der Westhuizen, arguably the best scrum half in the world, playing at Rugby HQ will cap a great year.
I really expect a very hard and tough game. I think it might be the toughest game this year, to be quite honest. I mean, they're playing for pride, especially with the opening at Twickenham. So I think this is going to be one of the toughest games this year.
Judging by the intensity of their training schedule this week, the Boks will be taking to the Twickenham pitch on Saturday with all their big guns blazing. Pete Barclough, Sky News, Central London.
In tennis, any hopes Thomas Muster had of ending the year as the world #1 have disappeared in Frankfurt. Muster surprisingly lost to Michael Chang in his opening match of the ATP World Championships. Now, Muster went into the round-robin competition knowing that if he won all his group matches and the tournament itself, and if Pete Sampras failed to reach the final against him, He'd replaced the American at #1 in the world rankings, but that's now all pretty academic after the Austrian was beaten in 3 sets by Sampras's fellow countryman Michael Chang. And there were wins earlier in the day for the 2 favourites to win this lucrative end-of-season tournament. Sampras himself cruising through his first group match with a straight sets win over the Russian Yevgeny Kafelnikov, while the local hero Boris Becker, he squandered 5 match points before finally beating Wayne Ferreira. Prince Nazim Hamed says he could be back in the ring within a month because his broken right hand is healing very quickly. The injury caused the postponement of his first defence of his WBO featherweight title, but as he unveiled his own range of fashion wear, Nazim said he's already planning another title shot.
In boxing terms, Prince Nazim Hamed is a cut above the rest, and now he's hoping to be a champion in the fashion world as well, as he launched his own range of designer sportswear. He is anything but just another Joe Bloggs in the ring, as his performance against Steve Robinson proved. But after taking the WBO featherweight title, a hand injury forced him to pull out of his showdown with Arnolfo Castillo. But now he says he's on the mend.
It's broken around about the metacarpal area, you know, at the back. But it's getting better, and it's bulging. It's a bit bulgy now, though, but as I say, it's getting better, and I'll be back punching solid in about 4 or 5 weeks, but I'll be back again. I'll be back.
After the rescheduled bout with the Mexican, Irishman Wayne McCulloch is the next man Nazim hopes to face, although he thinks the WBC champion is ducking him.
We should get it together, and you shouldn't be hiding in Las Vegas. You should get back to Ireland, get a fight arranged. We should get on a fight anywhere, fight in his back garden, you know what I mean? I'm prepared and I'm ready for a great showdown with Wayne McCulloch, but Wayne's not willing at the moment, so Wayne, if you're watching, get back to Ireland, mate, and get the fight took.
But whatever happens in the future, the Prince is sure to put on a right royal show. Richard Johnson, Sky News.
Well, the man who calls himself the People's Champion, American heavyweight Riddick Bowe, has begun a 4-country tour of Europe. Bowe, who beat Evander Holyfield in a non-title bout in Las Vegas earlier this month, was besieged by young fans when he arrived in the Danish capital of Copenhagen. He'll also visit Norway, Sweden and France. Although he doesn't hold any of the 4 title belts, Bowe still regards himself as the best heavyweight around.
All that title means to me that I'm the heavyweight champion of the world. I mean, you have all the other governing bodies and things of that nature, and their champions aren't really regarded as the best. I am.
Now, the jury deliberating the fate of Don King in the promoter's insurance fraud trial asked to rehear testimony from the boxer Julio Cesar Chavez. King's charged on 9 counts of defrauding Lloyd's of London by filing a false boxing contract. He's alleged to have claimed training expenses of over £200,000 for Chavez's fight against Harold Brazier in 1991. But the fight was cancelled, and Chavez testified that he never received the money. King, who faces a maximum prison sentence of 5 years if found guilty, has denied the charges. That's it. I'll see you for more sport later on.
Thanks very much, Steve. These are the world headlines this hour. Buckingham Palace has been caught by surprise by news that Princess Diana has given a television interview in which she apparently speaks about the breakup of her marriage to Prince Charles. The political agenda for the next general election will be set tomorrow in the Queen's speech. And a teenager has been jailed for 27 years for the murder of British tourist Gary Colley in Florida. Look at the weather for the British Isles tomorrow, and Wednesday will be a wintry day in the north, while the south will remain mild. Northern England, southern Scotland and the north of Ireland will have heavy, persistent rain. Some of the rain will fall as snow over northern hills. Either side of the rain band, most places will see a mixture of sunshine and showers. Across the continent on Wednesday, it'll be another dull, wet day for most of northern and western Europe, with a belt of rain extending from central Britain east to the Baltic states, and another running through central Iberia to the Alps. In between, southern Britain, France, the Low Countries and northern Germany will be showery. More Sky News at midnight. CBS News from America is next.
President Clinton and congressional Republicans blame each other for the budget deadlock that has shut down government operations all over the country. The strange case of the Congresswoman and her husband. As investigators look into their finances, he suddenly disappears. And now stepping up to the plate, the repo man in a high-stakes game of tag with uninsured drivers.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
Good evening. The latest round of talks aimed at breaking the budget stalemate between President Clinton and Republicans in Congress ended this evening. No deal, not even any progress reported. This as 800,000 federal employees were sent home when the government ran out of money. Our chief Washington correspondent, Bob Schieffer, has the day the budget battlers wouldn't budge.
As the president's top command arrived at the Capitol this morning, there was real hope the deadlock could be broken. Republican leaders sounded ready to deal.
I think we have a real chance to get some good work done in the next few hours.
In fact, the mood was so serious it looked and sounded like one of those Cold War nuclear negotiating sessions when the president's people and congressional leaders sat down to talk it out.
This country is at a moment of serious crisis. We don't want to have the government shut down. We don't want to have the United States default.
We've been sent in here to do real work, not just to have some kind of a photo opportunity here.
By midday, the talks had progressed far enough for the two sides to say they wanted another meeting in the afternoon. But then, unexpectedly, things began to unravel. The president emerged from his office, did not even mention the talks, let alone a possible compromise, and instead laced into Republicans.
Unfortunately, Republican leaders in Washington have put ideology ahead of common sense and shared values in their pursuit of a budget plan.
Republicans weren't just mad, they were stunned.
Mr. President, you make things very difficult with the speech you made today. Half-truths, misstatements.
And every time we reach out to try to help, we just encounter a new attack and a new mass of misinformation.
He didn't make it any easier with the statement he just made.
So everything was back to square one when the president's people left the Capitol after a long day of negotiating.
We were unable to make any progress with regards to resolving this crisis.
Panetta said he made a real effort to find a compromise, but the Republicans say it is the president who doesn't want a deal, and they think now they know why. They say he got a poll overnight showing that most people now blame the Republicans for the government shutdown. They're convinced that's why the president is suddenly so hard to deal with. Dan?
Bob Schieffer. Rita Braver joins us now at the White House. Rita, what about the view that the president's hard stand on the budget works to his advantage?
Well, in fact, Dan, White House aides privately acknowledged that the president, who has often been accused of being wishy-washy, is using this as an opportunity to look tough. His speech today was very carefully crafted to use words like, "I will fight." He said he will stand for a balanced budget that is good for America. And the White House has been circulating this list of times that Speaker Gingrich and other Republicans have vowed to bring on a crisis like this one. So the strategy here, in short, keeps saying it's the Republicans' fault, Dan.
Rita Braver. A footnote, all members of Congress, House and Senate, continue to be paid by the Treasury as stipulated by law. No reports of any groundswell in Congress to change that law. At one regional office of the National Labor Relations Board here in New York City today, they had to go out and buy a telephone answering machine when the whole staff was furloughed. As Linda Douglas reports, phone machines were the order of the day with so much federal business on hold.
The Washington Passport Agency is closed for lack of funding.
Due to the shutdown of the federal government, Social Security.
The Library of Congress.
The National Park Service
is closed indefinitely.
Washington began shutting down this morning. Almost as soon as federal employees reported to work, 40% of them deemed non-essential were told to leave.
You should clear off your desk and go home.
At the Education Department, almost everyone left, and they were sure they'd be missed.
A lot of things going on in the government that they need us for, so.
Outside of Washington, in Atlanta's Centers for Disease Control, many of the scientists who track illnesses left their microscopes behind.
There's too much to be done, and it's unfortunate they're shutting down the laboratories.
The Space Shuttle Atlantis remained aloft. Though most of NASA's staff was furloughed, those in mission control stayed on the job. From space, the astronauts jokingly sought reassurance.
I assume you give us an LOS call before you go home, huh?
National parks began closing, leaving unhappy campers at the gate.
We're shutting her down till further notice, okay?
National monuments closed early. In New York, a boatload of frustrated tourists was turned away after traveling long distances to see the Statue of Liberty.
We fly 6,500 kilometers to show the liberty, and then it's so bad, and I'm so angry.
But despite the disruption, most government services continued. Among those who were working, the post office, the military, air traffic control, the weather service, prison guards, and meat inspectors.
There we go.
The poor, the sick, and the elderly were not affected today, but some programs could run out of money if the shutdown continues for too long. Even at federal sites which have been closed, like the National Zoo, essential food service will continue. But if the shutdown continues, it may cost taxpayers millions because federal workers get paid even though they're not working. Linda Douglas, CBS News, Washington.
The finances of one member of Congress are under investigation. They were being handled by her husband, and now he's missing, gone. Correspondent Jim Stewart has the story of the Mrs., the Mr., and the mystery.
When Republicans took over Congress this year, Representative Enid Waldholtz of Utah was one of their brightest new stars, and her husband Joe, the acknowledged mastermind of her record-spending campaign. Now, Joe Waldholtz is missing. So is $2 million. The Congresswoman is in seclusion, and the FBI has questions for both of them. A favorite of House Speaker Newt Gingrich's, Waldholtz eventually spent $1.8 million of what she said was her own money to win election last year, more than any other member of the freshman Republican class. She now tells investigators the money was a loan from her family, secured by a $5 million trust fund her husband claimed to have, but which she now believes never existed. Earlier in the campaign, however, she told a television call-in show the money came from plain hard work.
All the more mystery. Where did you end up with $800,000 to put into a political race?
We've worked hard. We've been very blessed.
You made that money?
I made certainly some of it. My husband made a lot of it, and we've been very fortunate.
When questions began to mount last weekend over the couple's personal and campaign finances, Joe Waldholtz accompanied auditors to Washington's National Airport to meet with his own attorneys. But once there, Waldholtz slipped away, and with him $2 million of the couple's funds. Late today, Mrs. Waldholtz filed for divorce.
The Congresswoman says she is now assisting the Justice Department and wants to see her husband arrested. Investigators say they still want to know the true source of the Congresswoman's campaign funds. Jim Stewart, CBS News, Washington.
Straight ahead, the new medical procedure that can stop major brain damage from a stroke. And later, how a police team caught up with an accused serial killer and how a TV reporting team caught the scene as it happened.
Wondering, is that the new Metallica CD, the one with the bonus tracks?
Mr. Reed, fine, how you doing? No, he's not here. Probably at the library. No, it wouldn't surprise me, not with midterms coming up.
Another? Just like the other.
And just like the one before that?
But who's counting?
This is your last one.
Hey!
You know, I got one thing to say to you.
Okay, just not too loud.
Pull it together.
I'll get right on it.
You see, your problem is beginning to be my problem, and I don't need another problem. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you, Dad.
Bridges burn. You and I have so much more to learn.
An update tonight on our recent report about Olestra. That's the controversial low-calorie fat substitute. A Food and Drug Administration advisory panel today began considering whether to recommend federal approval for Olestra. A decision could come Friday. Olestra's maker, Procter & Gamble, says the product is safe, effective, and good tasting. Opponents say Olestra causes stomach and nutrition problems. Also tonight, a pioneering study points to a new way of dealing with one of the most serious health consequences of a bad diet. The same medical device that has proven effective in treating heart disease is now being used to prevent strokes and even stop major brain damage during a stroke. Case in point, a woman who underwent the procedure today, as our Dr. Bob Arnott reports.
Hilda Rhine became alarmed when she suffered the early symptoms of a potentially serious stroke.
I got real dizzy, and I thought I better get down on the floor, and I got on the floor, and my right side became paralyzed.
Today, her doctor did what was once unthinkable. To prevent permanent damage, he opened an artery in her brain, employing the same balloon angioplasty technique widely used to treat coronary heart disease.
It was felt that the risk of knocking a piece of plaque off and going to the brain would be too high.
The vessel is wide open now.
But at the American Heart Association meetings, doctors today reported the risk is not too high. Of 147 patients with stroke or near stroke, doctors succeeded in opening blocked arteries in 83% of cases, although 5 patients died later from stroke.
That you can possibly do it is an amazing thing. Then that you can open the blood vessel with a balloon is phenomenal.
Most strokes are caused when a blood clot travels deep into the brain, cutting off the blood supply, which damages brain cells. In this technique, doctors thread a narrow tube through tiny arteries in the brain to the blockage. They open the balloon, break up the clot, and restore blood flow.
We think now that this technique may be more widely applicable than any one other technique, either surgically or medically.
Balloon angioplasty holds tremendous potential for the prevention and treatment of stroke. In fact, Hilda Rhine is now out of surgery and doing well. But the real proof will come only when medical research demonstrates that it also protects patients from further strokes for years into the future. Dr. Bob Arnott, CBS News, New York.
Coming up, a thief in the night with a license to steal your plates.
Buckingham Palace has been surprised by news that the Princess of Wales has given a television interview in which she apparently talks frankly about the breakup of her marriage to Prince Charles. Politicians from all sides have been preparing tonight for the Queen's speech tomorrow, which is expected to set the agenda for the next election. And tomorrow's weather in Europe, dull and wet across most of the continent.
Been haunting me for weeks.
I'm not surprised. Who is she, this woman?
Me?
All right. Back off, girlie. Unless you want another accident.
Wouldn't fancy a stretching Holloway, would you? Could affect your pension.
As a matter of interest, what would I be in Holloway for? Arson? A rape?
Like I said, Mrs. Forbes, just a friendly warning.
Coast-to-coast killing spree was arraigned today in Kentucky. Glenn Rogers declined to enter a plea. Tonight, correspondent Frank Courier has new details and pictures of how police finally caught one of the FBI's 10 most wanted.
Suspected serial killer Glenn Rogers is wanted for questioning in at least 5 murders nationwide, maybe more.
Mr. Rogers, you're charged with numerous charges.
Today, he was arraigned by video link between his jail cell and a Richmond, Kentucky courtroom.
Come on, let's go!
In a day Kentucky State Police won't soon forget, Trooper Ed Robinson was first to set up roadblocks only minutes after Glenn Rogers' own family tipped investigators he was driving along a rural highway.
I mean, as soon as he spotted the detective, the race ensued, so...
How fast?
The little car could do about 100, and that's about what he did.
Police say Rogers was guzzling beer before he blasted through a roadblock, a detective firing a shotgun at his tires. Chick Poppy of Cincinnati's WCPO-TV was the only cameraman to record the drama.
We were on the wrong side of the highway, going in and out of traffic at 100 miles an hour, flashing my headlights. I mean, that's all I could do.
With a swarm of police cars in pursuit, the 15-mile chase ended when Rogers was forced off the highway in a daring squeeze play by 2 troopers, including Detective Joey Barnes.
This was one of those rare moments when we got a tip from a citizen, we had the people in the right place at the right time, and everything just fell into place.
The dramatic capture of one of America's most wanted fugitives has left state troopers here in eastern Kentucky inundated with calls from police agencies nationwide who want to question Glenn Rogers about many unsolved murders.
Already, Rogers is wanted for questioning in a cross-country killing spree. In a Kentucky cabin, an elderly man was murdered. In California, a Van Nuys barmaid strangled. In a Mississippi motel, a woman was stabbed to death. So too in Florida, a Tampa motel housekeeper. And in Louisiana, a fifth victim was slashed to death.
You think this is going to be the break in the case you were looking for?
Well, we had a warrant on him from the day that we discovered the body.
How many people have you killed, Mr. Rogers?
Rogers is jailed tonight without bond, awaiting extradition hearing. Ironically, close to home, where the family he had hoped would hide him from the law instead turned him in. Frank Courier's